The NHS is urging unvaccinated pregnant women to get the COVID jab after figures reveal they make up almost a fifth of the most critically ill patients. Doctors at King's College Hospital are warning of the danger of catching the virus while pregnant, as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
Sam and Claire's baby son is just days away from being born. But in July, just as she was due to be jabbed, Claire caught COVID and went downhill fast. She spent 12 days on a ventilator in St Thomas's.
After being admitted, my oxygen levels just kept decreasing, mainly because as being pregnant, he was obviously taking what he needed with the oxygen, and my lungs were getting squished and I just couldn't maintain what oxygen levels that I needed.
You've been sick for a long time, but you're very safe now.
In the intensive care unit at King's in Camberwell, the number of unvaccinated pregnant women on life support because of COVID has become a worrying trend. Even those patients who survive face a greater risk of a miscarriage or premature labour.
There's something about being pregnant that makes our immune systems change and makes us more at risk from viral infections generally. And COVID exploits this and is more dangerous to women who are pregnant.
Like many mums-to-be, Hannah, who's from East Dulwich, was worried about the effect of the vaccine on her unborn baby. Eventually, she opted for the jab.
Having read up about various studies and also that the vaccine had been out for quite a while by the time I had it, I kind of decided that the risks were just too great not to have it.
Claire's experience was frightening.
I wouldn't want anyone to go through what we've gone through. It's traumatic, and the truth is my husband was possibly going to lose both of us, or he was going to be a single dad, and that's the truth of it, really. So I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Some of the worst affected COVID patients have to be treated with an ECMO machine, which oxygenates the blood when lungs can no longer cope. The NHS says 1 in 5 patients having ECMO therapy are unvaccinated pregnant mums. Simon Harris, ITV News.
Good evening. 2 people were injured when a train crashed through barriers at Enfield Station during rush hour today. The overground service came off the tracks at just after 8 a.m, stopping short of hitting the ticket office wall. 50 people had to be evacuated from the train. Transport for London has started an investigation, as Simon Harris reports.
When the 745 from Liverpool Street failed to stop at the end of the line, it crashed into the buffers and rose into the air. And there the rush hour train sat, perched at the end of platform 2 at Enfield Town, with the roof of the leading carriage perilously close to the 25,000-volt overhead power line. Mehmet, who runs a minicab firm, heard the crash from his office in the station and helped evacuate the concourse.
I just opened the door, have a look at it. I've seen what I've seen. A lot of the people was gathering out here, coming inside, and I said to them, would you please, anyone who's got nothing to do with the train, get out and clear the area for the emergency services. And that's what I did.
Amazingly, no passengers were seriously hurt. There were just 2 minor injuries, including the driver who was treated for shock. Transport for London says the train was travelling at around 7 miles an hour, little more than walking pace, when it hit the buffers. It came to a stop just feet from the glass wall of the ticket office. It's one of a fleet of new trains which began to appear on London Overground in 2019.
I've spoken to TfL. This was an Arriva train, London Overground. The Rail Investigations Bureau will be undertaking an inquiry. Thankfully, there aren't the sort of casualties we could have had.
As crash investigators tried to figure out why it happened, passengers turning up at Enfield Town found themselves stuck.
I've got to go to court, I've got to be there in 30 minutes, so looks like I'm not going to make it.
Obviously there's no trains going back to where I want to go, so it's a bit difficult.
I just find out now.
And you can't get where you're going?
No, not at all.
Engineers plan to use hydraulic jacks to lift the train from the buffers before lowering it back onto the track. If it all goes to plan, the station will reopen tomorrow morning. Simon Harris, ITV News, Enfield.
19 months after we last saw sight of them, the night tube is finally making a return. Well, sort of. Only the Central and Victoria lines will open on a Friday and Saturday nights from the end of October. However, before the pandemic, the trains were manned by drivers who volunteered to do the night shift. And the RMT unions say there's been no agreement for that in place at the moment. Our political correspondent, Simon Harris, reports.
More than 18 months after the last trains ran, London's night tube is coming back, but it's only a partial revival on 2 lines. The Mayor has been under pressure to reinstate the service from business leaders and from groups campaigning for women's safety.
Restoring them next month will help many businesses which have struggled during the pandemic, like bars, clubs and restaurants. And crucially, these 2 lines will also provide another safe, quick travel option for Londoners travelling home at night.
Night tube trains will begin running on the Central and Victoria lines in the early hours of Saturday, November the 27th, but not on the Jubilee, Northern and Piccadilly lines. And that left the Mayor's critics unimpressed.
Over 125,000 Londoners have signed a petition asking you to reopen the night tube in its entirety. 2 out of 5 lines isn't good enough, Mr. Mayor. Please, can we open all 5 tubes this year?
Transport for London said services on the 3 lines not included next month would restart as soon as possible. But in the case of the Northern line, that's unlikely to be before the middle of May because of a big engineering project to improve the track on the Bank branch. And there's no date either for the return of night trains on London Overground between New Cross and Highbury and Islington. The revival of the night service could also be threatened by a possible strike. Before the pandemic, the trains were operated by part-time drivers. But London Underground wants night work to become part of the normal shift pattern for drivers who work during the day.
We're currently in dispute about that, about this issue, which means we've had a vote of our driver members to protect their rights in this matter. And ultimately, a strike could be called. But look, I want to avoid that. And the RMT does too.
The other major rail union, ASLEF, has accepted the new rosters, which include an extra payment of £113 for working a night tube shift.
So, Simon, what is the problem with relaunching the night tube?
Well, Transport for London transferred all the night shift drivers to day shifts at the start of the pandemic so they could cover staff shortages caused by sickness or self-isolation. In the meantime, some drivers have left, others have retired, so new drivers need to be trained up. But social distancing rules has made that difficult. A driver's cab on a tube train is a very small space. And of course, Transport for London has also run out of money, is under pressure from the government to prioritise what it can afford to do. But I think the growing awareness of women's safety issues and pressure from the West End night economy to be revived has made a compelling case for it to come back.
OK, Simon, thank you.
We have, sadly, been here before. Sir David is the 6th MP to be murdered since the war. Most recently, Jo Cox was shot in her constituency in 2016. And every day, MPs deal with abuse and threats online. Questions now turn to the safety of those elected to represent us. Our political correspondent Simon Harris is in Westminster for us now. Simon.
Duncan, the Palace of Westminster has some of the best fortifications of any building in London and has done ever since the MP Airy Neve was murdered in a car bomb explosion as he drove from the underground car park in 1979. But the security measures MPs enjoy here don't extend to their constituencies, where every week they're expected to hold face-to-face meetings with their constituents. The vulnerability of constituency MPs was exposed in 2010 when Stephen Timms, the Labour MP for East Ham, was stabbed and badly hurt by a woman who attacked him in his weekly surgery in Beckton. This afternoon, the veteran Conservative, former MP for Eltham and now Father of the House of Commons, Sir Peter Bottomley, had this to say.
We know that in hospitals, in shops, in public transport, we're all at risk. But we're not that at risk that people won't come forward to do what we've been trying to do. So whenever an MP is attacked, whether fatally or not, there are others prepared to come forward and fill the gap. And as long as that happens, I think our way of life will go on being put forward, promoted positively by people the way David has in his near 40 years of parliamentary and political public service.
Sir David Amess described himself as a people person. He liked eye-to-eye contact. He missed meeting his constituents during lockdown. Increasingly, though, MPs have become the target of abuse on social media and even death threats. And tonight, the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, said questions were rightly being asked about the safety of our elected representatives. She's expected to make a statement to the House of Commons next week.
Simon, thank you.